What is the most mysterious or paranormal thing that you've witnessed? When the wife, then girlfriend, and I were in our second apartment, I saw shit all the time, but the first encounter was the weirdest. I was hanging curtains, standing on a poofy chair, when I started to lose my balance. I felt a hand on my butt to steady me. I finished drilling in the last screw, then turned around to thank nothing. I expected my lady there. As soon as I turned around, that's when the feeling of the hand left my butt. My wife had been in a completely different room the whole time. Not me, but my dad. When he was younger, he used to see a woman in a white nightdress holding a candelabra walking along the hallway at his old house. No one ever believed him, but he thought it was his grandmother. Fast forward 20 plus years, and he's talking to someone he works with. This girl says she used to see a woman in a white nightdress holding a candelabra in her old house. My dad asks where she used to live, and it was his old house. Spooky. So this is a story from my family. When my mom was a young girl growing up in Vietnam, she had this weird dream about being in a darkened church. Everyone was talking in hushed tones, but it was English, so she didn't understand what was going on. But she remembered certain details, like the stained glass windows and the baptismal font. She told her parents, but they were kind of dismissive. They just told her it was a weird dream. A few years later, she was forced to flee South Vietnam because of the Vietnam War. Her family relocated to Florida, and they started their life over. After about 10 years, she went to the local Catholic church for her younger sister's confirmation, and suddenly she realized it was the same church she had dreamed of as a child. The same darkened church, the same stained glass, the same baptismal font. She talked to her parents again, and they remember her having the dream and describing the place exactly. Maybe some of it is altered memory, but it's one of our family legends. My great-grandpa told me this one. One time when he was younger, he went to go visit some old friends and their daughter. He arrives on a horse. He was a rancher in Texas. The little girl walks up to him and says, "Hi, Paul. I'll take your horse. Dinner is ready. You can go in and sit down." So he walks inside and sits at the table. The parents walk up to him and say, hi, who let you in?" He says, "Your daughter took my horse. She said I could come in." They look horrified. She's been dead for 6 months. I went to pick up my daughter from a dance on the waterfront. I was early, so I walked near the lake. I saw something very bright, not moving, at about 20 degrees up. Sirius was at about 40 degrees that night. Then I looked down and saw a pure white coyote walking along the water's edge. Even though I purposefully made a lot of noise so as not to startle the coyote, it didn't acknowledge I was there. I looked back at the star, which was still not moving, but suddenly went from exceptionally bright, dimming down, to nothing. I looked back to the coyote, and it was gone too, although it was a very dark night. This all happened at 12:30 a.m. The next morning, I woke up to a phone call telling me my best friend had died in Norway. He died at 6:30 a.m. local time, 12:30 a.m. my time. My company headquarters in Germany was supposedly haunted. I figured the guys, NCOs, and even the first sergeant were just fucking with me before I had to be CQ. So it's like 2 a.m., and I start hearing shit coming from upstairs. A broom being pushed down the hallway, voices, hell, I even smelled cigarette smoke. I go outside to see if there are any cars in the lot, even though to get into the building you had to go right past me. Nobody parked outside. I go back inside. I'm still hearing voices and the other stuff. I slowly creep up the stairs, and I can hear the voice speaking German. I get to the top, nothing. No people, voices are gone, no brooms left out, but the smell of cigarettes was still in the air. That's what I'm gonna do if I come back as a ghost. Start sweeping an office building. About 20 years ago, I was T-boned on the passenger side of my car by a drunk driver who ran a red light. I went flying across the intersection, and my car was stopped by slamming driver's side into a utility pole. I don't remember being hit. My car was absolutely totaled, and I did not have a scratch, bruise, or sore muscle to remember the accident by. When the police showed up, they did not believe that I was in the car crash and had to rely on witnesses to attest to the fact they helped me out. I sometimes think I was somehow protected by something I don't understand, and that I was to go on to accomplish something major in my life. Then I get a little sad because I don't really think I accomplished that. In my bedroom in the house I rent, weird shit happens all the time. At 2:30 each night, there's loud bangs that come from my closet. Sometimes I hear whispers by my head as I'm in bed. But the thing that creeps me out the most is feeling pressure on the edge of my bed like someone just sat down. Not witnessed, but happened to me. When I was in high school, I dated this marvelous girl. She was charming, sweet, and had the perfect smile. Sadly, she got in an ATV accident and passed away due to head trauma. This destroyed me, and I was a wreck. But exactly a week later, if I recall correctly, I got an email from her saying that she was so excited to hang out with me that summer. It strangely made me feel better. I don't know if that message was in the drafts folder for X amount of time and then automatically sent, but I was happily surprised that somehow she spoke to me after her passing. I also got a text message from her phone that week, but no one had touched the phone since she had passed. Her parents and brother wouldn't go in her room. Does knowing the future just once in your life count as paranormal enough? About 20 years ago, I was in a foxhole just behind enemy lines and had the one and only paranormal experience of my life. In a flash, I knew the future. I saw what would happen approximately when, the lighting conditions, the angle the person would walk up from, everything. It was different from just thinking about the future or wishing. It was just a flash of knowing. Hard to explain. A couple hours later, it happened exactly that way. I've never forgotten, but it's never happened again. I don't understand why it happened. It wasn't crucial or anything. At least I don't think so. Wish it could have been on lottery numbers or something though. My mom grew up in a rural part of Guatemala where witchcraft was a real thing and has so many stories of the weird shit she and her brothers and sisters experienced there. Of all the stories she tells, the creepiest one deals with a young apprentice to a witch doctor who traveled around the country healing people. He was murdered west of Guatemala City, and they had arranged to bring his body back to be buried there. They paid bottom dollar to have some poor bastard go pick up the body and bring it back in his pickup truck. The guy gets there, loads the coffin in his truck, and starts heading back. But his truck breaks down on the way. He gets out and frantically tries to get the truck back on the road, as he has to be back in time for the services to start. He is completely alone in the dark hours of the early morning, and a man in a nice suit comes out of nowhere to help him. The man gets his truck back in working order and walks back down the road into the darkness. The guy gets the body back in time, and after some prep, they begin the services. He happens to walk by the open coffin to pay his respects, and sees that the dead man in the coffin is the very same man who had helped him with his truck. To this day, I get shivers thinking about it. Dude was just trying to help out at his own funeral. Nice ghost. I saw a low-flying triangular craft in northern Minnesota. It hovered above a parking lot for about a minute or so, then slowly slid out of sight. It was very large and roughly 100 to 200 feet above ground. I researched similar sightings, which are numerous, and there are some theories, but nothing concrete. Notably, this happened about 20 miles from a U.S. Air Force base. Thankfully, I was with one other person who did witness this. I lived in an old farmhouse that work provided me with. The stairs were very creepy. One night, I was home alone in my room, and someone opened the doors to the stairs and walked up and stopped at my door. I opened the door to see no one there, but I heard it very clearly. But it wasn't the only time. Another time, I heard someone going up and down the stairs, so I turned on the lights, and it instantly stopped. I turned them back off and went back to my room to lay down, and it started again. It's happened a few times. That would scare the ever-loving shit out of me. My mom told me this story the other day and it freaked me the fuck out. When my oldest sister was little, like 3, she asked my then pregnant aunt to pick her up and hold her. My mom said she was like, "She can't pick you up, honey. She has a baby in her tummy." And then my little sister was like, "That baby is dead." My mom freaked out, but my aunt and grandma were fine and were telling my mom it was all good. She was just a toddler and didn't know what she was saying. Well, lo and behold, my aunt goes to the doctor the next day for a routine pregnancy checkup and the baby was dead. Gives me the willies just thinking about it. I saw a UFO once. I grew up in a really small town, population around 500. That was the only thing besides cornfields and emptiness between a bigger city and an Air Force base. One night, I was just sitting around playing with my NES when my mother came rushing up the porch and into the house screaming that a UFO had followed her all the way home. Naturally, my dad and I just kind of laughed. Then we saw the look on her face and bolted outside. There was what can only be described as a very round, smooth version of the B-2 bomber. It was this creepy metallic and shiny color. It would look near invisible unless you were right under it and would reflect back this huge FOV from the ground light bouncing back off of it. Also, I was probably 10 years old or so my memory and judgment of distance could be faulty, but as I recall, the aircraft was almost totally silent and only traveling around 40 miles per hour. I realized aircraft cannot sustain lift at that speed, but honestly, my father and I followed it in a car for as long as we could, until we ran out of road, and were easily able to keep pace with the thing. From my memory, the design was clearly a newer version of an already existing US military aircraft, but it was still freaky as all hell. When I was 7, I was having a sleepover with my cousin at her house. We played with Barbies and a sweet Barbie RV. Anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw an old lady in a dress or nightgown walk through the giant Barbie RV and through the door to the garage. I never told anyone anything about it. 10 years later, my aunt and uncle were selling the house that I witnessed the above. My dad was like, finally, they can get rid of that haunted house with the annoying old lady. I was like, what do you mean? And he describes the ghost, and it was what I thought I saw when I was 7. Again, I never told them what I saw, and they confirmed it without knowing my story. I am a skeptic, and this is the only thing that makes me question that. About 10 years ago, I was walking one night with my sister. We were passing a familiar point on the road when suddenly we both found ourselves about 200 meters back the way we had just come, approaching the familiar point for the second time. She turned to me and said, "What just happened?" We both had experienced exactly the same thing, like we had just been pulled back 20 seconds in time, and neither of us could explain it. No spooky ghosts, but a lasting feeling of something deeply unnatural having happened. I was in the middle of a session with my therapist, and we were starting deep meditation/hypnosis. I had finally achieved what I would describe as the deepest state of relaxation I'd ever gotten to. About 5 seconds into this deep meditation, the room got incredibly bright, as far as I could tell with closed eyes, as if I was looking at the sun with my eyes closed. My therapist stopped mid-sentence just then. She didn't speak for 5 seconds, and I asked her if everything was okay. She said, "I think you just produced a ray." She refused to tell me what she meant, and she dropped me as a client the next week.